Hey there, sugar dumplings. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me. Today, I would like to talk a little bit about unverified personal gnosis, those incredible experiences where you get those downloads, those whisperings from the gods, those little bits of information that are just for you, that relationship that you build up with your deities that has nothing to do with anything that is about them in the consensus realm. So any of the history, any of the myths, any of the things we generally agree upon in books or on Reddit. No, this is information and communion that has happened only between you and that incredible, very special being in your reality as a witch.
How did you know?
The gods told me.
And what do we do with those downloads? What do we do with that unverified personal gnosis that we have received? I'm very interested in the ways in which I sort of like process the downloads that I receive from the principal beings that I work with, especially Hell and the Holy Mother Mary. And I'm really interested in the idea that we can make the receipt of unverified personal gnosis not only as useful and as meaningful, but also as safe and as problem-free as possible by sharing information like some of the thoughts and feelings I have in this video. Get at me down below in the comments if at any point you have something that you want to share. I know that there are lots of spiritual seekers and mystics and witches of every stripe that watch me that receive unverified personal gnosis. You have very deep and individualized communion with beings, especially beings that a lot of different people work with. And I think that's one of the things about UPG that's interesting, isn't it? Because we can have agreements with each other about what certain beings are like, what their personality traits tend to be, which archetypes they tend to symbolize, and how they work with human witches. But there's also this incredible area where things are just happening for us as individuals with the being. And how do we deal with those downloads? And how do we maintain that sense of communion in a devoted way, but also in a way that is safe for us, for our mental well-being, and in a way that is useful for us on our life journeys? So I wanted to share some thoughts and feelings about processing UPG, what to do with the UPG after you experience it, and whereabouts are there some danger zones? Whereabouts can things go wrong? So if you feel like you need this right now, grab a pen. If that's your jam, definitely grab a beverage, get comfortable. We're going to talk about unverified personal gnosis today, and I am very, very excited about it. In the past, on my channel, I have spoken about the fact that we experience deity through the lens of our own consciousness. And that means that we can end up with slightly different ideas about the nature of a specific deity. And the ideas can vary from witch to witch. But there is sometimes this consensus, this overlap between our experiences. And that is what tends to be the sort of foundation for the ways in which we are in agreement about who exactly or what exactly a deity is, what kind of themes they tend to work around. And we do go beyond, in the consensus, in the agreement between witches, we do go beyond usually whatever is in the history about them, whatever is in the myths about them, whatever we tend to understand from like the common pool of information. So we do have unverified personal gnosis that has become kind of verified or group agreed collective gnosis, if you will. For example, when I speak to people about Hell, other dedicants of Hell, other devotees, other people that work closely with this being, there is a consensus agreement about the type of being that she is, the type of themes and the type of problems that she tends to come along to assist with, what kinds of offerings she likes to have, and all that kind of thing. And that is something that's come from various different types of UPG being formulated together in a delicious disco fudge ball. And that has come from us sharing information and sharing insight. There are also things that really are my personal gnosis. They're not something that I've ever seen written down. They're not an experience that I've ever known any other witch to share. And you're going to have plenty of that stuff as well that is going to really give colour and flavour to your personal experience. So the first thing that I really want to say about having a healthy perspective on unverified personal gnosis is that you do have to accept and be okay with the fact that it is going to be your personal gnosis. It may not match up with what other people say about the being that you're having this wondrous experience with. And there will be some instances where you read somebody else's UPG around the exact same being as the one that you are dedicated to or communicating with. And you're going to think, huh, That's a very, very different thing that they've communicated to that witch, maybe sometimes even the polar opposite to what they've communicated to me. And I think one way of processing UPG healthily and having a healthy perspective on it is acknowledging that and being okay with it. Just being fine with it and knowing that everyone has their personal relationship to the divine being. It's just like the way that you will know somebody in a different way to how somebody else will know them. And so you will have some joint agreement on who that human being is, but they will show different sides to you and maybe speak to you in a different way than they speak to somebody else. I don't really see deity as being much different to that. I do think the modes of communication are based on our needs. They're based on how best the deity knows to speak to us and what they know about us. So it's really important that when you experience unverified personal gnosis, that you allow it to change you and you allow it to inspire you, and you don't worry so much about the fact that it's not verified. It is unverified personal gnosis. That's why it's UPG and not VPG. So we have to get comfortable with the unverified part. A healthy perspective on UPG for me would be to process it more with curiosity rather than to take it immediately to some kind of hard conclusion. So the very first thing that I'm thinking when I experience UPG is, what could this mean? Not this must mean I must do, but rather like, how am I supposed to take that? Where does that sit within me? What is this bringing up for me? What could this possibly mean? And also, is it connected to a larger pattern within the communication I'm having, either with this being or with other beings? Is it actually connected to a larger message or a larger point of understanding that I'm supposed to be receiving right now? So really, UPG for me should always lead to more questions. It should never really lead, at least not immediately anyway, to like an action, a decision, a hard and fast rule for myself, something that I immediately need to do or change in my life. I think that's where it can become kind of sketchy and dangerous, and we will definitely talk about that later in the video. For me, UPG is like a buffet table. I'm tasting things. I'm being like, okay, what does that tell me? And what flavor does that remind me of? And where does that sit in my palate? I'm not just going to fucking order off the experience of one event of unverified personal gnosis, right? One download, one message, one incredibly strong channeling session. These things are incredible to me. They give me comfort. They help me. And I know for anybody who watched my recent video called My Real Witchcraft Advice, you are really going to know that I experience UPG in an incredibly meaningful and deep way through my channeling sessions with the runes, with my goddess Hel. And I have similar channeling sessions and similar sort of ways of inviting very large chunks of downloads, right? Big meaty meals of downloads. Vegan meaty in my case.
Сознание мое хочет победы вегетарианства во всем мире, а подсознание изнывает по куску сочного мяса.
There is a lot there, but off the back of that, I'm never looking to overhaul my entire life, I think it's really about letting things build up more naturally than that. Like one instance of UPG is not going to make me turn my whole life on its head. And so I think that's really important. It's curious and not conclusive. It's what could this mean, not this must mean. And that's really one of the major differences that I think I use to try and make my perspective healthy. A spiritual download that's been given to me from a deity in particular is an invitation, not an ultimatum, right? Like it's an invitation to feel into what is going on with me. How am I responding to that message? What am I doing with that information that's come through? Not a case of like, oh, well, this is what I need to do next. Like it's been dictated by this God, so that's what I need to do. I would personally never work with a being that I felt wanted to bark any orders at me and would be annoyed with me until I carried out those orders. That would be never how it was going to fly for me. And if that was the only way I felt like I could work with personified deity, I just fucking wouldn't do it. Frankly, I just would not do it, and maybe that's the Sag in me, okay? But I just would not. So for me, everything is kind of like this path of exploration and this really enticing invitation to think more deeply about where does that sit with me? What's the reaction I had to that? Why might that be my reaction? And as I said before, is it part of a larger pattern of communication? Have I already been receiving messages like this? And are all of those messages kind of like slowly turning into some kind of very delicious signpost for me? I have learned a lot over the course of time, I think, about how to process UPG in a healthy way. And one of the things that I will say that I think is so critical is this, okay? Once I realized that I was beginning to receive personalized messages, insights, downloads, etc. from beings, I very much realized as well that my spiritual hygiene had to be on lock, because a lot of different shit can come up in the human psyche. A lot of different things can occur to you or can come through in dreams or daydreams or whatever it might be. They can come through when you're in the ritual mindset, in the trance state, etc. And I don't think all of it is going to be this incredibly clear communication from a being. I think actually a lot of it is going to be ego junk. I think it's going to be leftover energy, bad, stagnant energy, weird vibes, stuff that you should have gotten rid of in regular cleansings. I think some of it's going to be wishful thinking. Some of it's going to be, you know, stuff that I would have liked to hear, but isn't really actually the case. Stuff I would like to have come in to make excuses for myself or bolster myself in some way. I feel like some of it is just going to be tension, anxiety, worry that I'm then translating into something that has a higher spiritual meaning. But actually, it's just that I need to cleanse. I need to cleanse. I need to ground. I need to center. I need to reclaim my power. I need to redirect my power in a more clarified way. And I know I stick on recommending this video to you guys over and over. But if you would like to know more about energy management and spiritual hygiene, please click on the video I'm going to leave down below in the description and watch that one after you've watched this one if you haven't already, because it is all about energy management. I will talk to you a little bit about getting a system together for your centering, grounding, cleansing, protecting, and everything else. Those things are really important, I think, anyway, for witches. But once you start realizing that you are in receipt of unverified personal gnosis from beings, honey, if you're not doing your energy management, your spiritual hygiene, I quite frankly don't know what to say to you. That's got to be happening. Energy management and spiritual hygiene allows you to be more awake, more clarified, and more discerning about what is coming through and where it's from. Another thing I've learned over time is that UPG might not necessarily make sense today, but it might make sense in a few days' time. Like, not everything is this really, really clarified download that makes complete sense from beginning to end, and it hits you right in the consciousness and it lands exactly where it needs to. And that is why a lot of people write down their experiences of receiving downloads, receiving messages, receiving information and insights from beings. So I would recommend definitely making a note of as many different things as you possibly can that even remotely feel like UPG. And a lot of that can be done on your phone. I definitely utilize the notes in my phone to write down any synchronicities, any messages, anything I get through from channeling or divination that I feel like is from a being. And I feel like it's really my understanding of how that being is working with me and how they're directing me. Don't be afraid to write things down, come back to them and reassess them. Another thing that's really important about UPG is that a lot of people worry that they're not receiving any when they're working with beings, but there's a couple of things I'll say. First of all, sometimes it takes a while, okay? I have definitely spoken to people who are worried that they're not receiving anything back from a being that they've worked with for a couple of months. Honey, hell did not get back to me for 2 years, okay? Do not panic. I did not receive anything from hell that I definitively felt was UPG from the fucking lady herself for 2 years. Okay, it was just 2 years of writing devotional poetry, leaning into her in meditations, requesting her presence in dreams, reading everything I could get my hands on. 2 years, okay, before I really felt like I was receiving something back that was unmistakable, super clarified, and really started to have a direct effect on my material situation. And I'm not saying it's necessarily going to be 2 years for you, but it might be. It could be. It was for me, but I held on in there.
I've waited years. How many years?
23 years, 4 months, 8 days.
Okay, so definitely don't worry if it's been a while. And also another thing I think people get really mixed up is what UPG is supposed to be like. When you experience a download, when you get that personal communion where you feel like you've gone into the office of that being and had a consultation with them, it's not always supposed to feel like that. You're not supposed to get like a voice in your ear in your mother tongue explaining everything and breaking it down for you. UPG, or like lots of communications from spirits and from deities, etc., they come in metaphor. They come in metaphor. They come very sort of like beautifully wrapped in lyrical, poetical, mythological vibes, you know. They come in signs or repetitions of signs. They come in dream form. They come in daydream form. They come in all kinds of different ways. It's more about the knowing. It's more about where it hits you and sits within your vibration, that you kind of know that that is something of significance, rather than, oh yeah, I absolutely heard it in, very clearly in my language in my ear. That is so rarely what happens. I rarely speak to anyone who hears their deity speaking to them in the language that they speak. It doesn't usually happen like that. So I think it's really important to let go of these ideas that are very kind of like cinematic and very Hollywood-like, that would lead us to believe that UPG is supposed to be super straightforward, like sitting with a god in a coffee shop and just like shooting the shit with them. It can begin to feel that comfortable when you get used to the fact that it's often in metaphor and in poetry and in synchronicity and in mythopoetics. Another thing it's important to remember is that UPG, or one specific slice of unverified personal gnosis that you receive from a being, is very rarely going to give you the entire jigsaw puzzle. It's very rarely going to put the entire picture together for you. It's going to be a piece. It's going to be a slice. And that's not the case in every situation. Like the first experience I had of direct communion where hell was saying something to me was very conclusive. It was almost like I felt that she had been waiting for the precise moment when I needed to be hit right between the fucking eyeballs with the answer to the question that I needed and that I was struggling over and I was racking my brains about and I was worrying about, right? And she came in very hard and fast with a definitive yes, bitch, do it. What the fuck are you waiting for? Do it now. And it was very helpful. And it did, after I'd processed it and made sure that I was connecting to it and it was okay with my ethics and it's okay with me, okay? No sort of blindly following, no culty vibes here.
Please, come forward.
Once I'd processed it, it did have a massive material effect on my reality. I changed something huge because of that UPG. But a lot of the experiences of receiving information and receiving direction are not like that. They are not the whole animal. They're not going to put the whole jigsaw together for you. So don't worry if it's just one piece that gets you closer to what it is that you need to understand about something. That first experience of being told something very definitive by my matron goddess was quickly followed by me going home and grounding before I interpreted, okay? So my interpretation with the first experience of UPG from hell was very straightforward in some ways because, like I said, it was a very definitive answer to a very definitive questioning that was going on ad nauseum inside of me for several months before that. And it was at the point that I got to a crescendo of frustration that she was just like, oh, here, take it. But yeah, like basically what I do after I receive any kind of direct communion experience that has instruction or has advice is I ground. I ground before I start to write things down and figure out where it landed within my vibration and what needs to happen next. So I definitely would recommend that if you experience something that feels very intense and very instructional or very kind of like a strong direction and you feel like you're being turned on in the map of your life, definitely take a few deep breaths, drink some water, ground in whatever way is best for you, and really come to it from that perspective of like, okay, now I'm anchoring into self, I'm anchoring into body, I'm going to write some stuff down and I'm going to calm the fuck down, okay? Because I do think UPG can be incredibly heady, it can definitely be incredibly surreal, it can have an untethering effect, and witches really need to be aware of that untethering effect. Some downloads are not ready to be understood yet, like I said, some of them are just one piece of the jigsaw puzzle, some of them are half a piece of a piece. Don't be afraid to keep a little maybe file, okay? You know how I said earlier about keeping notes when it comes to UPG? Don't be afraid to keep a maybe file, all right? Like the maybe file is a sacred thing where it's like, maybe it was that, maybe it wasn't. Maybe that was a thing, possibly not. But I'm going to keep a note of it and I'm going to see whether or not there is any pattern that is inherent within that. Does it come back around again in another way? Am I reminded of it later when I'm not thinking of it? Are there any more pieces to this that would make it into, more of a jigsaw piece in itself? Processing UPG, a lot of it is just paying attention to patterns. When it comes to what your beings are saying directly to you in a conversation with you, or the little post-it notes that they're sticking onto your psyche for you, patterns can be everything. If you see repetitions in your dreams, in your daydreams, in what's coming through in ritual, what's coming through in the cards, definitely pay attention to that. Patterns are something that we can pay attention to, and really sort of on a long enough timeline, they become way more informative. A lot of amazing things happen after you experience UPG, after you've actually sort of like taken something into your system, some kind of direction, some kind of advice. It feels like doors have been opened, and it's a really beautiful feeling. There might be some experiences of doubt. Maybe you're gatekeeping yourself, right? So you really need to allow yourself to trust your intuitive connection with the being and take from it what you want from it. Don't forget, you're not out here to prove anything. You're not writing a white paper on this shit. You're not doing a TED talk on it. You're not trying to convince other devotees of that being of what you experienced with that being and what is coming through for you. It's just between you, baby. It's just between you. It's a very intimate, very close, very personal interaction that you've experienced. And if you gatekeep yourself out of being able to ingest the nutrition from that, you're really fucking yourself over. And for what? You know, if it feels right for you and it feels like a guiding force for you and it's making you feel incredible things about potential for the future or who you are in your soul or the fact that you're going to be able to get closer to solving a problem in your life, who gives a fuck what somebody else would think? Who gives a fuck what their experiences have been? That's why it's personal gnosis, okay? And that's why it's unverified, because we don't need to get it verified. It is something for us. It is something that is going on with us and this being, okay? And it's what you and you alone and the being know. Okay. And together you're forging that relationship. And sometimes these relationships can be incredibly life defining, dynamic, deep, visionary, and lifelong. Don't let anyone or anything take that from you. Okay. Be in intimacy with the being. Don't start to worry immediately about, oh, well, how is this placed in the wider knowledge of what we know in consensus about this being? Or does this sort of like, you know, attribute very closely to anything I've read in the mythology or like any of that stuff? Would so and so who does a course about this being agree with what just happened between me and this being? Don't give power away by immediately deferring to other witches that you feel have more status or more experience than you and asking them to like sign off on your UPG. No, we do not do that. That is not the way that I think UPG is most nutritious and is best processed. Sometimes when somebody experiences a very sort of clear shard of communication coming through from a being, their main temptation might be to immediately ask the being to clarify and confirm, clarify and confirm. And that's something that I would definitely recommend against, okay? We definitely want to let the UPG be something that we sit with, something that we are delighted about and overjoyed with, something that we taste and we consider and we ingest and we take our time with. You want pacing when it comes to UPG. You do not want to like quick fire, frantically request confirmation and confirmation from the being. I feel like it's quite difficult sometimes for us to do that, especially when we feel like the messages that have come through are something that is quite like high impact. It's quite high octane advice. And so we really want to like get that suggestion that we really need to nail it down into our consciousness because it is the right thing. And so the temptation to go back to the being and be like, hey, can I just get like a double, triple sign off on this thing that I think you said to me earlier? Because I really need to know, was it you? Am I correct? Is that still what you think? And is that going to be what you'll think tomorrow and the next day? I think UPG is something that is, well, let's say the processing of UPG, the experiencing of it, the processing of it, and the using of it in our lives is an art form. It is an art form, and you get stronger with it and you get more confident with it as you grow into your witchhood more and more year on year. And don't forget, I think one thing that needs to happen after we've experienced UPG is to remember that it might not necessarily be like other experiences of UPG. If you speak to a witch that works with various different beings, right? They work with deities, they work with spirit guides, they work with ancestors, etc. They work with their own thought forms that they've created, very important. You will note that many of them will say that there are different styles of communion and there are different categories of experience. And they have come to get to know over time what the categories of experience are going to be with each being. Some of them are going to be more untethering and more surreal than others, right? Some beings are going to be way more blunt, way more straightforward than others. Some beings are going to have a fucking opinion on everything. And some of them are only going to come in at the 11th hour when you've tried absolutely every other thing. And they're going to affirm something for you right as you are vacillating at the, cross line, right? Right when you're in crossroads mode, that's when that being is going to turn up. So beings have different ways of communing with us, and we come to learn what the spiritual personality of a being is and how best they know that they're going to be communicating with us. And we create our own individual styles of communion in response to that. So let every relationship with each individual disembodied intelligence be what it wants to be. Don't try to line them up. Don't try to make them balance out. I think this is definitely a mistake that I made in the past with my relationships with the Holy Mother and hell. I definitely tried to balance it out. I tried to make the communion that I had going on with both of them be equal in nature. I wanted to feel like because they held equal weight in various different parts of my psyche, that I wanted them to know that I was equally invested, and I wanted to feel that I was getting equal communion and doing equal devotion. That was never going to work. That is not helpful or healthy at all. I had to separate them both visually in terms of getting the hell and the Mary elements off of my altar space and putting them in separate places. And I also had to separate them psycho-spiritually for me. I had to witness that, like, if you want to allow these relationships with these incredible disembodied beings to grow, you've got to separate from the idea that they have to be balanced in your understanding, in the time spent with them, in the effort, in the devotion and everything. And instead allow the two cycles to grow independently of each other with each of the beings. And that does mean that sometimes of the year I spend more time with hell and sometimes more with Mary. And it does mean that I don't consult with both of them on everything. They have their own areas of interest. They have their own classifications of themes, right? Their own thematic structures inside my head and with me. And that's got to be okay. So definitely I would recommend against trying to make your UPGs balance out. Like, oh, now I need to go and ask this being, and now I need to have an experience with this being. No, you don't. You really don't. It's got to be about allowing each relationship and each form of receiving energy and messages to grow independently of each other. Before I go, my darlings, I don't think this video would be quite complete without talking about a few of the dangers with UPG, a few of the pitfalls that it might be important for witches to watch out for when they are really connecting with and are in receipt of sometimes this quite heady communion with disembodied intelligences. So I wrote down a few notes here. I just kind of want to quick fire because I don't want to spend too much time talking about the downsides and the fears and the dangers. I think there is actually a lot of fear mongering on the internet amongst teachers of the craft when it comes to UPG, and I don't want to feed into that too much, but I also want to be honest about the fact that some of these things can be important to note, right? The first one I wrote was stay humble. If you're experiencing a mammoth amount of experiences of unverified personal gnosis and you're having like daily tete-a-tetes with a specific being, you're really probably going to want to make sure when it comes to that, that you are aware that that just means that you are open, you are available, and you are a nice energetic match for that being. It does not mean that you are the chosen one of that being, that you are better than anybody else, or that you know more than anybody else because your UPG tops their UPG.
Oh, of course. We're a little more progressive and ahead of the curve here in San Francisco.
And I know I'm speaking to the choir here because I don't think that the people that follow my videos are really about that life of, you know, like getting high on your own superiority and high on your own connection to a being. But I do think that there is that element with some people that have a incredible amount of communion with a being under their belt, that they can end up sometimes just writing like a very, very pompous course about like, I know the way and you have to follow my UPG if you want your own UPG, and like, fuck that shit. That's the whole point of it being unverified and personal. So let's not do that, okay? Let's not shit on anybody else's gnosis, and let's not tell ourselves that our UPG experiences mean that we are the fucking chosen one and we are the ultimate, like, you know, divine priestess of that being, and everybody has to go through us and our school of connection to whatever being. Like, you know, and definitely distrust that kind of shit when you see it. There's nothing wrong with being really into teaching about a specific being, having a book on that being or anything else, but I think we know the smell of superiority when it passes our noses. Okay, so let's be very careful about not giving too much credence to people who think that their UPG makes the sunshine out of their ass. Oh, I went there. Another danger with UPG is that you can let it allow you to throw your logic out of the window, right? Your critical thinking and your intuition can definitely dance with each other. So please let them do just that. Like I said, take some time, ground before interpreting, check everything against your own ethics, your own mindset, your own way of being, check for patterns, right? All of that kind of thing. Don't be afraid to commune, okay? Communion with a being is not just about like a one-sided set of instructions or a set of directives where you just follow the orders like some fucking lemming, okay? That's not what's going to happen here. You're in dialogue, and I think that's one of the highest forms of being with disembodied intelligence. Now, some people will say to you, well, I have a God that directly tells me what the fuck to do. When I'm in my own way and I'm on my own bullshit, this God comes in and just like cuts the crap for me. Fine. If that is your individual experience and process with a disembodied being, fucking incredible. And between you both, you know that that is what is needed for you, right? You have a trust in that being. You know that when you're on your BS, that being will come in and sort your shit out and pull you the fuck together. Okay, slap you psycho-spiritually upside the head. You're ready for that. You want that. And that's the agreement you've set up between you and that being. But it doesn't need to mean that that is across the board what needs to happen, and that you need to like surrender your critical thinking, your individuality and your sovereignty to a being that's come in and is telling you what to do. Like, let's really make sure that we're not going down that road. Another danger with UPG is what it might be at risk of doing to a witch's nervous system, right? We talk about experiences of receiving personalized insight or advice from gods as being something that is incredible, mesmerizing. It's something we want. It's something that we really want to tap into. But actually, it can also be something that can trigger trauma. It can be quite shocking. It can pull you out of a moment where you're supposed to be being grounded and being in the middle of something, you know, being in the middle of work or in the middle of a conversation, and suddenly you feel quite untethered and you feel quite kind of like, you know, snapped into a very sort of like deified experience where you're like, oh wow, I'm on a cloud with this being, we're having a conversation, or I've received this telegram from a god, you know. So it can actually kind of like pull you off course a little bit. It can also be advice or insight that you did not want, that you were really hoping would not be what your being would come back with or come in with. And so there always has to be this gentleness with yourself, I think. UPG is something that, yes, can be incredible, but it can also be something that has a very game-changing element to it. It can have a game-changing quality, and it can also have a, you know, unsettling quality in some respects. It can be quite difficult sometimes. And I know I'm talking about UPG in relation to beings in this video because that's normally what we're talking about and normally what's happening. But UPG can be something that can happen with concepts, you know, it can be something that can happen around certain things like, you know, unverified personal gnosis in terms of what you know about astral travel or what you know about a certain type of magic, right? I think really more broadly, it's anything that we have not agreed upon via consensus. If we don't see it in the resources, it's not something that we can say overall that we, you know. It's something that came to you. It's a download that came to you. That can happen not only with beings, but with other things as well. And it can be unsettling and it can be perturbing, and it can actually ask a lot more questions than it answers. So be gentle with yourself, take your time, go back to some of the previous pieces of advice in this video around grounding, around making notes, making a maybe file, looking for patterns and all that good stuff. I wrote down here that there is like an addictive quality to UPG, and sometimes when people have experienced UPG on this really like, wow, game-changing level, they can actually end up going in search of it, being addicted to it, being dissatisfied unless UPG is happening or has just happened. So it can be like, you know, the addiction to the peak experience, basically. So that's something that I think we want to watch out for with UPG, because I've got to say, like, it's incredible to get those ridiculous downloads that you feel have been actually like put onto your cosmic plate by a god. Like, they have served up dinner and it is just a nutritious and delicious meal, and you feel so fucking fed, and you feel so seen, so witnessed, so valued, so guided, so reconnected to your soul's purpose, whatever it might be. That's incredible. That is a peak experience. I have felt high as a fucking kite after experiencing UPG. And so we really need to make sure that we also feel high as a kite when we say hello to a friendly cat in the street, walk through some crunchy leaves, talk to a friend, you know, watch something we enjoy, right? If I don't feel high as a kite from those things as well, there's a problem. UPG has become drug-like in its nature, and that's not something that I want with my practice. It's untethering, it's not healthy for my mental well-being. I want to be watching out for that, and so I suggest that you do too. Not everything is a message. Some stuff is just fucking weirdness, right? Some stuff is just a mystery that we need to embrace. Some stuff is going to be a broken piece of a piece of a piece of the jigsaw that will never come to anything, and even if we we ask for clarification, we won't necessarily receive it. We are in receipt of a lot of different things, okay? Witches are intentionally sort of reopening and redefining the portals that give us access to all kinds of different shit. So please don't worry if some weird squiggly things sometimes amble through a certain doorway and we're like, who are you? Where did you come from? What are you to do with? How do I categorize you? And the weird squiggly thing just goes, I don't know, and then just like dances out. Don't worry, don't panic. Enjoy the mystery, embrace the variety, and just be like, okay, well, if that's important, it will come back in more fully formed and it will announce itself by name. But at the moment, I'm not really sure. And not everything is important to pin down like that. Metaphysics is not physics. So it's okay if some squiggly things come out the door, fly out a window, delightfully confuse us for a moment, distract us maybe for a second, and then we're back on with stuff, okay? Stay on your shit. Stay on what it is that you're using your magic and your ritual and your divination for. Stay on your aims, both collective and personal. You know, if you feel distracted by a lot of weird, fizzy, crazy, sparkly shit, do a cleanse. Have a cleanse, right? Have a cleanse, have a ground, have a protect, have a little shield party for yourself, you know? Just get on lock. Write down a list of the things you're currently trying to achieve with your magic, your strengths, your aims, your areas of research. Just get back in the driver's seat, get things a little bit more contained, a little bit more steadfast, a little bit more upright. Finally, one of the most important things I want to say about unverified personal gnosis and about experiencing downloads that have been tailor-made for you by the gods is that a healthy ego is the number one fucking thing that makes UPG into something that is healthy and beautiful versus something that can be tyrannical, cult-like, and scary. And if anybody knows about the recent controversy with Aubrey Marcus and has been watching anything to do with those podcasts or anything like that, you will know that Aubrey Marcus is a spiritual bro, let's say. Very, very popular in some spiritual circles. I only heard of him because of this scandal that has been going on. But ultimately, he told his wife that he was largely monogamous with, essentially, apart from the odd dalliance. They agreed to have a monogamous marriage. He told his wife that Isis herself told him to impregnate this woman that was his new girlfriend, that he said he had downloads that he had to have a girlfriend. Like, just go look at it, just go watch it. Like, this is somebody that never questioned the personal nature of the communion that he received with this goddess, if indeed it was even Isis. He never allowed either of these two women to have a say in whether or not it was Isis and what they thought of the interpretation or any of that stuff. It was literally like, I went into Isis's temple and she told me to impregnate this woman that we've been sleeping with, and that they were both going to be essentially the, you know, the mothers of my children. And it's caused a lot of a stir in the spiritual community because it's seen as somebody taking their UPG and using it to ride roughshod over the promises that they made to their wife and whatever the women are feeling and thinking about their own future and the use of their own bodies as vehicles for this man's children. That is just one of many, many, many examples I can give where UPG gets sketchy, where we start talking about one person's UPG as though it is a directive for a bunch of people, not just them, but the people they're sleeping with, the people that they're connected with, the people that they're in spiritual community with. And we know what that is and what it can lead to. It's culty. It's culty vibes, babes. It's culty vibes. And we know what that is, just saying. And that is why a lot of feathers have been ruffled. This is a man saying, Isis told me to impregnate you both. How do you like them fucking apples, right? I think that having a healthy connection to our ego, to our sense of who we think we are, how we have been wanting to be perceived, what we are afraid of knowing that we are, all of that dialogue that we need to be having with ourselves. And there is a lot more to the Aubrey Marcus thing. Let me know if you want a video on it because it is cray-cray, okay? The whole thing is cray-cray. Like, I can't talk about it anymore, but yeah, it's ridiculous. Let me know down below if you've been on the Aubrey Marcus popcorn gravy train, because it's been crazy. But I just really think that when it comes to UPG, we know that for fucking aeons, people have been saying, I had this directive that means we all need to do this. I'm in touch with God or whatever, a being that told me that we all need to commit mass unaliving or we all need to have sex with me, right? Everyone in the group needs to have sex with me. If you watch documentaries about cults, you know how dangerous UPG is when it is used, when it is weaponized, when it's lied about, when it is harnessed as a tool of manipulation over a group. So don't let that be you or someone you know. That is all I'm saying. Wow. Okay. Isis told me to say that, so don't blame me. Don't get at me in the comments. Isis told me to say it, guys. Isis told me to tell you all to give me $100 right now. Go to my PayPal. Isis said, guys, believe me, I spoke to Isis about it. Trust me. Okay, she wants me to be rich. Darlings, I have loved sharing these thoughts with you about UPG. I'm so interested in any and all thoughts that you have on this incredible topic. Please get at me and let me know what you're thinking and feeling. What have your experiences been with UPG? What would you like your experiences to be? And has this video given you any more of an idea of how you would like to process these kinds of deep personal communions with beings? Let me know anything that I forgot, anything that you don't agree with, anything that you want to see from me. As always, let's come together down in the comments. Don't forget that you can join my Patreon. There are incredible exclusive Patreon goodies every single month. I am consistent as fuck on Patreon, my darlings. So go over there if you want more from me and you want to join the community there. You can also grab a reading or session with me over at my online store. The archive is now open, so if you missed any of my previous workshops or pre-recorded courses, self-study courses that you did not manage to get your little mitts on at the time and you want them now, the archive is open for a limited time only. Go over there, fill your boots with all of the goodies. They will come direct to your inbox and you can start self-study today with my workshops and courses. I've been very busy over the last decade, and some of the things I've made, some of the juicy treasures that I've made are available in the archive right now at kellyannemaddox.com. Much love until next time, my darlings, and blessed be. Mwah.